The grief of menopause. There are two stages of grief that happen within menopause. One at the beginning, when we enter perimenopause, a state where fertility is no longer accessible to us, and one before the end, when our sense of I-ness, our sense of identity, delves deep into our subconscious, leaving our conscious self to experience the feeling of loss. Now, normally we associate loss, or grief, should I say, as being the loss of a loved one. And in a way, that is the penultimate loss, the loss of separation. But there are many other transitions in life where we experience loss of separation. And these can be divided into two. External ones that happen outside of our own personal mind and body. And this can be the loss of a loved one, but it also can be a divorce, the loss of a job, our home, and even our country. And there are other smaller ones too. And at the same time, in a woman's life, when she's going through menopause, she will experience possibly some of these external losses that I've just explained. But there's also the internal loss. And that internal loss, if what I'm talking about today, is what we experience when we transition, when we go through the transition of menopause. And this internal loss can be the loss of ourselves, or a part of ourselves, or parts of ourselves. That which informs us, this transforms a woman's behavior, lifestyle, and ultimately her identity. Hence why I said it can be the loss, and it can feel like the loss of herself. This is probably why menopause has been referred to from beginningless time as the change in many, many cultures, because it presents a landmark in one's life before menopause and after it. Although each transition we experience slowly unfolds and rolls into the next phase of our life, albeit some are, sorry about that notification, some are harder than others. Menopause is the one that we know the least about. Right now, medical professionals are teaching us that perimenopause is when we experience some symptoms. And when a period, our bleed is missing for a period of time of 12 months, that's the menopause. And that one day after that 12-month mark, that is postmenopause. Well, I disagree with this definition, because the human body, especially a woman's body, is not as black and white as that. To classify that one day time frame as being postmenopausal, when there's over 100 symptoms of menopause, is just not enough. It's not as clear cut, especially when it doesn't actually look at or answer the mental and the emotional depths of what goes on within the menopause, that which we're talking about today. And these depths are the depths of confusion, despair, loneliness, melancholy, sadness, anger, self-reflection, shame, guilt, betrayal, anxiety. Now that's a lot, and there's more. That's just some of the, I don't like to say symptoms, it's some of the ailments one experiences during this death process. The loss of security of one's health and youthfulness, which may include a woman's size and shape and complexion and hair are just a few, but all of them are part of this life transition that tends to happen during the menopause and contribute to this feeling of grief. And it has a knock-on effect on all of our relationships and the plans of our immediate and distant future. For example, a woman may plan to have children. A woman may plan her retirement if she's fortunate in this modern world. But how many of us are taught to plan for this life stage? The differences between grief and depression needs to be touched upon in this subject, because far too many women are prescribed antidepressants for this process of grief. They're described antidepressants rather than HRT for menopause. Now, I'm not saying that antidepressants are bad per se. I'm saying that sometimes the menopause is not picked up. And that's because, believe it or not, the menopause is not a mandatory subject for a doctor to learn about before he or she is qualified as a medical doctor. And that's why little is known about this transition, this transitional stage in a woman's life. And even if one is prescribed HRT or something else, it primarily deals with the symptoms, which I like to call ailments, by the way. So as we cross our fingers and we hope that by replacing our hormones with a synthetic substance will give us our emotional and mental state pre-menopause back, does it still deal with grief? The grief that's happening around us? How can it, when we're offered contraception that forces our body to bleed longer than it wants to aid the prolong of our maiden years and to postpone our menopause years? Now, I'm not knocking or judging you or anyone for taking contraception at this stage. I'm knocking the treatment of it being prescribed in the first place. And the reason why is that it doesn't have effect on the biopsyche. And what I mean by that is your body, your mind is biologically ready to grieve. And so by putting medicines that are stopping that process, it's like putting a plaster and a cut that actually needs stitches. Because while one is doing that, and the grief isn't being addressed, grief is happening nonetheless because of the life stage of a woman's life. It's happening all around her, all around you. And when grief happens around us, it's natural that we question our own, what's that word I'm looking for? Our own life, our own immortality. So let's take a look at it, menopausally. Menopause is the end of our ability to bear children. And so we go from being able to give birth at the start of our womanhood to not being able to, even if we have all the body parts still there. And this is, so we naturally start to reflect at this stage upon our identity, asking bigger questions such as our gender, the function of womanhood, the meaning of being a woman, and the pleasure around sex and sexuality as a woman. And even a woman, even one's sexual orientation. And this can be even amplified if the body parts aren't there, such as within the removal of them for the sake of a hysterectomy. I know. I binge watched the L Word after my hysterectomy because I wanted, and not just the L Word, there was other sexual identity programs that I also watched, to give my body a chance to choose what it liked. As I asked who I am, who I was, what I want to be, having had 6.5 organs removed, I really did question my whole identity, asking, what, am I still a woman? What exactly makes me a woman? And you might be questioning the same thing too, as you grieve your definition of womanhood. This grief we feel when we first enter the menopause, at the perimenopausal state, as we naturally recall at this stage all our previous chances to have children, the loss of births, or the near misses, including abortions, miscarriages, as well as diseases and disorders that blocked us from giving birth. We grieve them all throughout peri and menopause, as our minds naturally enter this tunnel-like phase of self-reflection that may very well feel like hell. And in this grieving process, if this grieving process is not addressed, it can continue into post-menopause. So to better understand this feeling that may feel like hell, let's take a look at the difference between grieving and depression. It's important to distinguish the two and to also see why and how doctors and society get them mixed up. Because both ignite the emotions of sadness, disinterest in things that used to be pleasurable, and also can throw up problems and, let's say, challenges in regards to eating and sleeping. The difference can be seen in the time frame, the intensity of the emotions, and the disruption they cause to a woman's daily living actions and her lifestyle as a whole. So depression is a sickness that affects one's ability to move through it without the aid of help. And most often that's medication. At the same time, the emotions and the experience of depression is more intense. These emotions such as worthlessness, anxiety, despair, and they affect a woman's behavior and impact her life. Whereas grief, a person is actually in a process of loss. And I'm extending the word process because with that, it gives you the ability to see and feel that there is a movement during the pathway of grief. And such emotions, the movement is a transition through certain emotions, such as denial, anger, bargaining, some depression, and into acceptance. That's very simply put, you can also have panic, guilt, resistance, and hope before acceptance. And to go into it just a little bit more detail, there's shock, there's loneliness, there's overwhelm, there's those disassociated, drifting, daydreaming moments. And as we're leading out of it, there is the reframing that happens within hope and acceptance. And in my coaching, I take the common 5 stages of grief, breaking them down like I did do just now into 12, but seeing them in the landscape of a woman's journey from perimenopause to post. So by the time she reaches postmenopause, she has found acceptance within herself, having explored each of these emotions, workshopped them and their shadow resistant side, and honor her own uniqueness, growing in resilience and patience and self-love and compassion. So this benefits her health, her relationships, her daily actions, her daily life, and her lifestyle as a whole, as she anoints herself with all the tools that she's learnt and is given, so that she can move forward and regain appreciation for her past and have better choices and abilities and potentials for her future. So how do you know when you're coming through the grieving stage? When you're nearly at the end? Well, that word acceptance is there. It's also when you accept responsibility for your own happiness and you start to discover and develop your own potential, starting to see and feel the potentialities within your life. And there starts to be a difference in the mental construction of seeing the menopause. When you start to mentally see it as a landmark, as the reframing process starts to happen. For example, before the menopause and after the menopause. Menopause, you could be saying or thinking or feeling, menopause has changed me, but has not destroyed me. I remember my life before the menopause, and now my life is XYZ. During the menopause, I discovered things about myself. Through the adversity or the challenges of menopause, I've grown to be a much stronger woman. I know what I want, and I speak up for myself now. I'm no longer my old self, but I'm still at the core me. I face the future with confidence. Life is worth living because I love and be loved. These are the mental concepts that starts to be felt in one's heart and recognized in one's mind. And that is when you know you are coming out of this grieving process. And if you aren't there yet, that's all right. You're entitled to be exactly where you are right here, right now. As I've been saying, menopause is a natural journey. Menopause it's a transition. It's not a race. So be where you are. Live where you're at. And if you have the type of personality that wants it to hurry up, that wants it to just be over, which even if it's not part of your personality, but it's probably something that you're very much maybe thinking and feeling within the house stage. I want you to know that there is support. And if you're the opposite, and if you are a person that is enjoying the pace of your process, your transition, but you're feeling quite lonely on your journey, then I would like to invite you both to join the community that's in the button down below and join us on one of our monthly calls, whether that's in person, whether that's online. But please know that these spaces in these communities are limited. And they're limited because I like to maintain a sense of intimacy so that you feel safe and secure, and so that we also have enough facilitators to hold that space for you, so that, sorry about that notification, to hold that space for you so that you feel safe and secure. And also know that what you say in circle stays in circle. Confidentiality is extremely important to us. So click the link below, join us to be supported, as no topic of conversation is taboo when you're being supported by other women in the transition. Thank you.